there. I'm not quite sure if that's serving people or purpose specifically. And I don't necessarily state that you should now get the answer, but I think it's a really relevant question because it dictates a lot on how you're going to self-organize. Because it sets the boundaries, and with boundaries come the question of inclusion and exclusion. And I really see that as a big benefit of self-organization, and some of the tools of self-organization is to answer the question, what is in, what is out? Not necessarily to saying what's valid, what's not valid, but what's valid here? What is required here? What is needed here? And then start using and utilizing that for whatever it is that you're serving. A bit abstract, but I think hopefully the questions trigger enough resonance and follow-up questions to relate to the scenario that you're exploring today yourselves. Right, and before diving into the different parts of self-organization, the way I've structured this setup is I'll dive through a couple of key concepts that show up within self-organization, and then some of the key tools that you can use to self-organize. And I'll zero in on how we do that with the tools of the do a little bit, but it stays quite high level. But before doing so, I do want to highlight the alternative, right? Because choosing self-organization is not a singular question. It's I self-organize or something else. Not choosing self-organization comes with an implied reality that you're then choosing for. What does that look like? And that's different, again, for the context in a company that chooses not to self-organize. Often it falls back to the default of management hierarchy. I don't think that's necessarily relevant for Haifa or Seeds, but there's some interesting information in that I want to share anyway. Right, so here you have a conventional management hierarchy structure, the black lines, and then over the top of it, all the interpersonal relationships. And what's interesting here is to point out that the management hierarchy works in spite of its structure. Like its structure is never used in operation to figure out, you're not going to take your job title out and think, what am I going to do today? Or you're not going to go to the org chart to figure out who you need to talk to get something done. No, you know that because the interpersonal relationships are there, the information is there to figure out where you need to go. So I would argue that today, Haifa and Seeds to an extent, is this picture without the black lines. We are functioning without a clear structure, which is wonderful, right? So it's beautiful that that works, and I think we can do better. And I think we can use and utilize a little bit of structure, decentralized, distributed governance to help us self-organize and get clarity how to do work and how to create focus. Because I think that's one of the biggest challenges. If you're dealing with a group of people without underlying structure, focus gets really, really hard because everything is a valid discussion because we have no tools to assess whether or not we should have that discussion or who should have that discussion or who makes a decision. So in that sense, I think that's an interesting thing. And maybe you recognize, maybe don't recognize the specifics of the color lines, which are always a little bit of a joke. But the fact that we're relying on interpersonal relationships to drive and to get work done, which means that our relationships are going to dictate operational decision making, which isn't always the best choice forward to make decisions in pursuit of purpose. And that's also with the last question. My focus today is focusing more on how to self-organize around a clear purpose than necessarily how to self-organize within the community and self-organize the people. So this is very much painted from the perspective of Haifa. And I think lots of these tools could be explored and looked at in Seeds as well. But I think the self-organization around a clear purpose is most interesting because a lot of work needs to be done. And if a lot of work needs to be done, purpose needs to be manifested, and it needs some tools to do that well. So I think that's where the energy should go right now. And that's also why I choose to focus really on that area. Another thing around the alternative is, and this is just a symptom, there's many of them, but I just want to point that out, is the symptom that lots of decisions are made at the coffee machine. And the coffee machine in our world is the private Discord channels, right? So if we use private Discord channels a lot to make to get stuff done, that means our official channels and our official structure is not serving us. We want to weed out noise to get stuff done. That means where our tools are suboptimal. They're not serving us. If we are trying to find a way to, it makes complete sense, right? To create a bit of space and quiet so that you can focus on what you need to do. But how wonderful would it be if you can create that focus without having to shy away, so without reducing transparency. So have that discussion in the full open and transparent setting where everybody can listen in if they choose to, and say, hey, this is relevant for my role and XYZ needs to be integrated. So I just want to call out that if you recognize a pattern that there's a lot of private Discord discussions going on, hey, that might be a moment to ask yourself, why am I doing that? Why is that needed? Why are the official tools we're using not serving us? And there's multitude of answers, I think, there, but it's a trigger. So far, so good. I can only see a few faces, so it's always a bit, feels a little bit like a monologue just sending, and it's hard to test if that's landing. But
I have a tip for you. I just recently observed there is the little line in between your charts, your slides, and also where you can see all the faces, and you can move it on your screen.
Oh yeah.
Yep. So you can make your slides smaller, and you can have all the faces on the other side.
Oh, I think I know what you mean, but I'm not quite sure
it's a vertical between the pictures of the people and your slide.
And I think maybe that's a Windows. I've got a Mac that doesn't quite seem to have that, but it's also still working. So maybe I'm gonna get you explain that to me in a later time. For now, I'm gonna trust that there's some resonance and continue, and trust that you guys will call it out if there's none. Key concepts, right? I like this slide to make the point around the role of self-organization. So again, for me, self-organization is just a tool. It's just a tool for purpose manifestation, for more effective purpose manifestation. It's definitely not a goal in and of itself. And there's actually organizations that are really good at purpose manifestation in management hierarchies. I'm not part of it because I don't like it. It's not very interesting to me, but it's just another tool. But really to highlight here, it's a tool for purpose manifestation. And what is purpose here? Purpose is a point on the horizon. So you've got a bunch of different boats that are fully self-organized. And on that boat, they figure out who does what. And maybe one person does everything and the rest sleeps, or whatever it is that they do. They can figure it out. There's nobody dictating how to do that. But if there is no aligning purpose, this boat here on the forefront can take a left turn and hang out in the bay and chill out by themselves on the beach because they choose to like that. And then you're not talking about self-organization, but then you're talking about self-steering. Right? So then there is full autonomy to do whatever it is that you want. You are not part of contributing to something greater. And that's an interesting distinction. Again, it's about the question inclusion, exclusion. Which of your energies, wants, and needs are welcome in pursuing this purpose, and which ones are not? Those that are not are still really, really important for you, but not for this purpose we're serving right now. So you might have to find another outlet for that. That's the difficult discussion. I think that's really one of the key things to solve when it comes to purpose-driven work and self-organization. So self-organization should be the tool to make sure to get the agreements and to figure out how these different boats can align and actually enhance each other and stay on course and collectively move towards purpose, rather than all go all over the place and not really move and be still because everything moves in a different direction. So how do you do that? That to me is really the key goal of self-organization. And it's a beautiful indicator as well, right? So we have all this information. We're all sensing in our bodies if we're doing well at that or not. If we can improve on that, and we can identify hey, how do we quantify our purpose, measure that, and figure out if we're actually reaching it or not. So figure out, hey, we're not that good at it yet. Let's get better. Let's get better still. And that's a continuous journey. So in order to go fast and in order to experience freedom, you need boundaries. And that's really another one of the key concepts of self-organization, is setting the minimum viable boundaries, the minimum viable agreements, so that we can really work well and ideally manifest purpose as effectively and as fast as we possibly can. Again, right? If purpose is here the goal, that's where we want to head to. And I like this analogy of a road, right? If there's no lines on the road or no rules on what side to drive on, you could never go any faster than 30 kilometers an hour, because there might be a car coming from any direction at any time. So by having some lines and a few minimal rules, we can actually start to speed up and get better at doing what it is that we're doing. The analogy of roads and cars might not be the best, but I couldn't find a better one explaining the power of a few agreements, a few rules, to allow us to really get good at what it is that we're trying to achieve. Because there's often a lot of pushback on the idea of rules. Again, and I think that's very much rooted in this idea of the pain of the old. There has been power wielded over me personally for years, and I want to break free of it. Thus, I will never want to be exposed to any rules or any power over me ever again. And when you talk about rules, there is a limitation that is being set. The beauty of self-organization is that those limitations are in flux themselves. Those limitations, those rules are iterated over, and you have the full power to change those rules. So they are actually, in effect, the norms, the codified norms by which we choose to interact together to manifest purpose. So these rules are a powerful thing. They make explicit what otherwise would be implicit. And they're required. Like if you don't have that, we all stay a model of opinions that doesn't really move, which might be a lovely thing if you're self-organizing people. But here I'm focusing on self-organizing purpose. Another key concept is you can do anything at any time you deem needed to further your purpose, your rule's purpose, and you can do it now, unless specifically specified otherwise. But this is a wonderful change and move away from what we know in organizations usually. That is that you always need to ask for approval. And it's a really hard thing to do, because we are all encoded for years and years not to do that, not to just act when you think that is the best thing to do. But the principle here being, do what you think is needed today, transparently, and trust that any other person or role that has any input or is affected by it will speak up. So there's both in the management hierarchy, this doesn't happen, because we seek approval and we often need approval from higher up in the hierarchy. But also in flat organizations or organizations without structure, or in HIFA currently, or in seeds to some extent, the result is not that people, without the absence of hierarchy doesn't mean that people start to move faster. They start to seek consensus constantly. So there's still this fear in us of, I'm not going to do this. I just want to make sure, I want to nod of all my peers before I start to act. And that's really, really slow. And that's not to say you should do everything without informing or checking. No, if you need information, by all means, pull it in. But you don't need approval from your peers to act. And that's a paradigm shift, and that's a behavioral change that takes time. But it's lovely when that starts to show. It's really, how do we nourish and support the entrepreneurial spirit to start manifesting purpose as fast as we possibly can, and as effective as we possibly can. And if you ever feel weighted down, that you don't dare to move, that's a tension. Act on that. Call it out. Say, hey, I feel fear acting, either because of retributions of raised voices of your peers, or approval from a perceived hierarchy that might still exist in your mind. Whatever that might be, call it out so it's no longer in the way. So we can actually start acting and acting today. And I like this question, who cares? And it's a key, crucial question. Not in the cynical term as who cares is usually used, but you need tools to answer that question. Whenever you sense attention, whenever you sense an opportunity, whenever you sense a reason to act, you should ask the question, who cares? Does the organization care? Do you care personally, or ideally both? Without the tools to answer that question, our collaboration will always be the sum of our personal needs. So we need tools to assess what it is that you bring in, if that is relevant for the organizational purpose. And that's a key part of self-organization, to have the tools to answer this question. I really want to do X, Y, Z. Does the organization care? Should you be doing that in this context? Is that serving the purpose of what it is that I'm working towards right now? Or should I find somewhere else in my life, another organization to contribute to where I can start expressing that? Again, that inclusion-exclusion question. Those questions need to be answered, because if not, we're a group of people and everything is welcome, because by default, we are kind of loving and welcome, and we want to hear and include everything and everyone, which is beautiful, but doesn't always serve purpose. So when doing work, the question, who cares, is a really important question to ask. And I'll touch upon some of the tools on how you can actually start answering that question. Let me see, how am I doing for time? There, halfway. I think we're getting there. An incremental work and structure. This slide is a little bit poor, but the idea is there's many steps to the top, and we'll never really get there because it's hidden in the mist. This staircase will always keep going. So there's incremental steps to do the work. Well, that's common. We know that, right? Like also from methodologies from Agile and Scrum, for whomever is familiar with those are short iterations to do the work to move forward rather than really long, big plans. So that is totally part of self-organization. We need to have short feedback loops in the work that we do to test if we're still on track, manifesting purpose or not, measure that. Often new in this equation is that we do the same for the structure of the organization. So we constantly look at what is the structure of our organization and reassess if that's still serving our purpose manifestation or not. Do we need an extra role? Does a role need an extra accountability? Do we need to create a new circle structure? Do whatever that might be, new policy, new domain, whatever that might be around in the set of our agreements, our written down norms, is that serving purpose manifestation, yes or no? And if not, how can we change that? Not in a massive reorg that happens once every 3 years, but every week a small change to make sure we get to more clarity. And so that's a change, because we're often quite hesitant in making structural changes, specifically when it touches upon our own role, because we often very closely identify with our own role and feel personally attached to what it is. And then if somebody else is starting to remove that or even delete that, that gets really scary, and that discussion needs to be had, because maybe the role that you are filling no longer serves the purpose of the organization. Let's remove it then. And how can we support you personally in showing up in either a different way or somewhere else? I'm quite curious, when I share these things, are there some triggers? Is some fear showing up or some anxiety, or is there mostly resonance? Just curious to hear the voices in the room.
For me, there's curiosity, because yeah, I feel the resonance, but I feel at the same time the explanation is so wide, and for me, like, there's no for my mind, intellectual mind, any actual object to catch on and to, kind of settle with the idea, but I'm catching it and getting this resonance for sure.
Awesome. that's nice to hear, and we'll actually dive into some of the more specifics. Okay, how do you then do this? How do you translate these concepts into action? How can we actually play this game together? So thank you for that. I'm actually going to skip this. I think we mostly get this, and support the idea of distributed authority over centralized authority. There's some nuance there, but I think there's more relevant things to cover. And I think this one is I think the last concept I want to touch upon, and that's these agreements. So these rules that we play by, that we self-organize by, they're a safety net, right? So they are, when things are not working as they should, or somebody is not capable or able to process something important, an important voice that they have to bring in, the safety net is there to make sure we do not lose that. And these agreements are just that. So when you are self-organizing with a group of people that is really practiced in it and is really aware about the agreements that we have collectively, you hardly see those agreements at play. Everything is just working. Everybody is just really processing their roles into and manifesting the purpose of their roles in pursuit of the purpose of the entire organization, because nothing is in the way. The moment that a voice cannot be heard, or something or someone is overpowered, or something slips through the cracks, that's when these rules should start to show up and safeguard that this information is not lost, served, and changed and moved into meaningful change. Right? So, and again, like maybe an example how that might often show up is in an organization that uses a strong management hierarchy is, I don't know, you escalate something and nobody responds because they don't find it important. In a flat structure or an unstructured organization, it often means that people with a louder voice get a lot of time to say what it is that they want to say. And there is very little space for those that are a bit more reserved to get their relevant voice heard. So you need to have agreements and rules in play to make sure that all voices are heard, that all relevant voices are heard and processed into meaningful change in pursuit of purpose. So that's where agreements are good. So you need to have some agreements to sometimes say, it's not your time to speak. It's his or her time to speak, right? So, or whatever else that might be, but it's good to know that those agreements to stop something and support something else is important, because otherwise we are relying on interpersonal dynamics to dictate operational decision making. And that's a trap I see over and over again. If you don't start using structure to self-organize, you're going to rely on interpersonal dynamics, and loud people get more done, even if those loud people are very lovingly and very caring. Right? Interpersonal dynamics doesn't mean we have fights. It just means that your characteristics dictate your ability to make decisions. So how can we shy away from that and you really use all the wisdom at the table? And you don't have to fight to get your word in, because that's really, really tiring. That's where you want to have a safety net to make sure that everybody is supported. Now, how? And still quite a high level how, right? But what are the different tools that we can use to serve these different concepts that I just shared? And one is a base premise is the idea of attention. And often when I talk about attention, people see that as a negative thing. I have attention in my body, or I've got pain or something. But the idea here of attention is really a neutral definition of a difference between reality and a perceived reality. And there's tension between the two. That's it. And that can be experienced as a negative thing. I know we're running a server and it's down and it needs to be back up. Reality down, perceived reality needs to be back up. Or it can be a positive thing, an opportunity. Hey, we're doing really well. We've onboarded 25 new organizations this week. How awesome. And I see an opportunity to add another 5. Right? We can do even better, and there's an opportunity. They're both the same thing. They're attention. There's a difference between reality and perceived reality. The promise of self-organization is every tension, every relevant tension needs to be processed into meaningful change in pursuit of purpose. So, and the beauty is we don't have to learn anything new to sense tensions. We do it all the time. Everybody's fully capable of doing that. It gets harder to recognize it and to find the tools to act on it. And one good thing to know about attention that you don't act upon, they get bigger and they'll start to sit somewhere in your body. So a lovely exercise to do is actually just a body exploration to say, hey, where's my body not feeling right? And to really start zeroing in on it, calling it out and start working on that, figuring out what that tension is and if there's relevance for, well, obviously there's relevance for your life, but then find the context in which you can start acting on that. And sometimes that context is your purpose manifestation context of Haifa, seeds, whatever else that might be. Once you've surfaced the tension, how do you act on that? And there's a couple of tools and a couple of ways to do that. One of them is governance, and that's what I want to highlight here. So governance is roughly, simply put, the agreements we have together. That's the simplest definition I can give to governance. The way we define that in the Do currently, and actually this is totally borrowed from sociocracy, holacracy, and a couple of those other tools that use that. There is circles and roles, which in effect are very similar. They are containers that define a purpose and a couple of accountabilities we can hold those containers accountable for. Difference between a role and circle is just kind of how big is it, but we can both hold those accountable. And it's great to get clarity to figure out on which role I can hold accountable for, I don't know, writing an SQL query when I need it, or whatever it was, or writing a blog post, whatever that might be. Or maybe there's an entire circle I can hold accountable. Just go to that circle, say, I don't know how you guys did it internally, but here it is. Could you please write a blog post for me? Go. I trust you guys figured it out internally how to do that. It's the autonomy part. And I call out role fillers. They're actually not necessarily governance, but it's important to point out that roles and roles fillers are different. So, and this takes a little bit of time to get used to, because we usually just have a job and that's that. And actually, currently in Haifa, that's still very much how it shows up. There's one person with one role, and often the roles are shaped based on what the person would like to express. If you start to, in my opinion, mature a little bit more around how to play the game of self-organization, governance starts to follow purpose and purpose tensions, right? So we express how to best pursue purpose based on reality and realize we need a new role to do that better. And then we figure out who to fill in that role. Because right now, if you base the roles based on the people you have, you by definition limit your ability to figure out your blind spots. So you need to find the best people for purpose manifestation rather than figure out what you're capable of doing with the people at the table. And that's what I wanted to highlight with the role filler. And then there's two other parts around governance. Those are domains, and domains are here specified not as an area of interest or expertise, but as an explicit property right. So sometimes you realize, hey, we have, I know, a Twitter account, and we want to make sure that only role X can access that and deal with it and have the authority to grant somebody else to use it. I always coach to be hesitant on that. Let's make everything open by the start and only close things when there's harm done, verifiable harm in the past. And sometimes so domains and policies are introducing bureaucracy, and sometimes bureaucracy is really, really useful. But let's start with the default of no or hardly any bureaucracy, so policies, domains, until there's a need for them. And one policy example might be, well, one thing we're looking at right now within Haifa is defining some policies to give circles more authority. Right, so to give a circle the full authority to create their roles without the rest of the organization having to vote on that. Well, that's an interesting thing on how to increase autonomy. So you can really, so those policies really start to define the game rules by which we're playing. Lastly, I highlighted double linking in gray because I'm a big fan of it, and I think it's a very important part of self-organization. And I'm not quite sure if I want to dabble on that too much, but we don't do it currently. And double linking means is that we have somebody that's accountable for a circle, but we also have a representative that is there for the information flow outward, higher up into the purpose hierarchy. There's a lot to explore, but maybe I'll just check in with you guys for a second if there's any questions around the specifics of governance here, because I can't quite assess how much exposure you guys have had to governance and circle and role structures just yet. Any questions from that specifically?
And maybe even if I can add, Joost, I hope that's not going against your intention, but also in comparison to the experiences you make and you have on your own journey here in seeds or movement building or other groups you're involved in Haifa. So, you know, whether you feel some tensions or you have questions now in your mind or you're surprised about things, just really voice everything that comes up. Yeah, that's the room where we can talk about these things.
Joost, I have one question, and that is, even with self-organizing systems and self-organizing types of organizational structures, you still can't eliminate conflict. So I'm wondering what specific conflict tools or methods work better in self-organizing systems. And I'm working on that with Seeds in Haifa right now, so I'm just curious what you would say.
I love the question. Yeah, it highlights one of my my earlier on learnings around my personal definition of utopia used to exclude conflict, and now I realize utopia includes conflict. We cannot eliminate it. It's fuel for change. So just calling that out because I want to celebrate the fact that we cannot eliminate conflict. And it kind of comes down to the details of the conflict, right? So do you have a conflict on how to do work? That's really where governance can help. Then you just got clarity. Hey, we've got one role that's accountable. That's the leading opinion. Go for it, do it. The rest is just input that another role can use or ignore. Until and unless that creates harm for another role as well, right? So it really depends on the details. The more challenging conflict is interpersonal. And there's many conflict resolution methods out there. And personally, I am a big fan of nonviolent communication and some of the tools it provides to traverse and explore that. I've got another few methodologies that we've been playing with, like SCT is one that we did some experiments with. And maybe also, that's the depth of sorry, yeah, go Dani.
Just because you mentioned it, and Stephen might not know it because he was not part of it, but in the academy we had a session on SCT with Peter, who was also having one session where also Haifa members were involved, and we are now exploring how we can bring him in more often. So that's only one part of it.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to say I worked with that myself, but as yet we have not embedded any specific tools to handle conflict resolution within the Haifa Seed setting. And I'm glad to know they're looking at things because we're actually going to need it as we scale up.
Yep. Yeah. So you can actually, so specifically, you can hold my role accountable for conflict resolution. I have a role with a specific accountability around conflict resolution and encoding that into Haifa. I'm in the process of that. Me doing it in my role is not scalable, and it allows me to integrate a lot of learnings to move that forward. So maybe it'd be nice to have a little spin-off session amongst the two of us to explore that further, because I'm quite curious to hear your wisdom there as well.
I did put something in the chat to contact you directly.
Awesome. Great. Thanks for that. Appreciate that.
There's two other people want to speak, and one is from Christoph. He wrote the question, how do you take decision in self-organized organizations? I love that.
Nice. Depends on the nature of that decision, right? So is it an operational decision you can do anything unless specifically specified you can't. Right, and that's a deviation from the nature of how we're currently often showing up, because there's a lot of alignment seeking and consensus seeking. But like, if that's a bigger decision, it makes a whole lot of sense to publish it first and integrate perspectives. And there's actually lovely ways to do that. You know, you can experiment with sociocracy, for that matter. Where it is gets different is when it's a governance decision. Currently, governance decisions within HIVA have to go through the do as a vote. So we need to vote on a change of the structure of the organization or a change of an agreement. So that does require a proposal and a proposal to be accepted. But again, unless it's specified otherwise, you can do anything autonomously at any time. And I really encourage that, because as soon as you break something, we'll know about it and we'll learn from it. And we introduce the bureaucracy to make sure that it doesn't happen again, or we celebrate the fact that you autonomously made some progress.
Yes, but if you take the example of reinventing organizations, Frederic Laloux's book, in his book, he says that it's better to ask to at least 2 colleagues before to take a decisions, because you don't know everything, and you can take a decisions that will break something. And like you just said, if it's broken, then you can learn from this conflict. Okay, but maybe it's more efficient if before to take a decisions, you take the advice of at least 2 other colleagues.
Yep, I like that, and I encourage that, and I also encourage autonomy there, for you yourself to assess, is this a big decision where I need some help, or can I just make that decision? I think the key there is transparency, and that really alludes to what you're saying, and what Frederic Laloux, I think, is also saying, is if we do that transparently, make sure we publish our decisions, and with bigger decisions, publish the intent of a decision, then we can rely on anybody chiming in if they deem relevant. The trick, I think, in an organization like ours is to honor the right to ignore an opinion, and that's something we're really poor at. We suck at ignoring each other. But if we get better at ignoring each other, we can increase a lot quicker. And again, ignore transparently. Say, thank you very much for sharing your opinion. I disagree, and now I'm going to honor my own autonomy and move forward. How beautiful is that? Right, so we don't have to integrate everybody's opinion all the time, unless explicitly specified you should.
And if I may add again the question how the circles are going to make this decision or have a decision-making process is also upon the circles in the future. So we will also ask the circles to find their own governance on how they want to create this decision-making process. So it will not be like one tool or one method or whatever, but every circle will be responsible or accountable for their own decision-making methods or process or whatever. So again, self-autonomy.
Yeah, that's the beauty of the holonic autonomy, right? Like the boundaries are not permeable from the outside, but they're permeable from the inside, right? So you should not be able to reach into a circle and change something. You can change the boundaries of a circle if that serves the purpose of the organization better. And currently we have a lot of overreach going on, of people having opinions about what happens in a certain circle, and that creating a lot of uproar and unbalance and chaos, reducing our ability to manifest purpose with focus.
There's one more question. Justin said that he can wait and go to Discord, but I don't know how your time is. We have 6 minutes left, but there would be one more hand.
Geez, time, like all of a sudden thought we had 20 minutes left, but we're in there. I think I'm close at the, let's do the questions. I think this is really relevant.
Okay, Justin, do you want to voice it yourself?
Yeah, I could feel like in my heart when you're kind of giving some of this like your right to ignore or do anything unless it's defined not to. I can feel some like fear in my chest and my heart. As I recognize there's like a developmental capacity or an ability or practice around being able to take this type of self-governing or self-managing steps. And so I wonder, like, how do we as individuals, but also how, maybe as like if you have a practice of like facilitating, like how can I support myself, but also facilitate the other, and being able to take these steps into, this open space.
Yeah, lovely question. And I'm actually I'm gonna move to a slide that helps a little bit, because first I want to really call out, this is really hard. This is harder, not easier than a management hierarchy, because it comes with a lot of freedom and ability, but also accountability, and it asks a lot of you. So people need to be supported to do that well. And you cannot create safety, that sort of safety to thrive, and show vulnerability and share all the challenges you have when there's not a real safe container to do that in. So that needs to be facilitated, in my opinion. Like the best way to start this transition is by introducing heartbeats. So an operational heartbeat, a governance heartbeat, a human heartbeat, that are all facilitated and all contextualized by somebody that is just there to create that safety and to support those heartbeats. And that's really like the focus of my role in the coming 3 months, is really around creating, supporting facilitators to show up, to allow for those heartbeats to show up so that you can collectively start learning. Because one of the beautiful things, I think, around self-organization and explicit agreements-based self-organization is that it does not require personal growth per se. It really invites personal growth, and if you do not personally grow into it and self-reflect, you cannot continue playing that game. If you lean on a principle-based method of self-organization, you're kind of reliant on the collective ability of self-reflection for it to function. So we're outsourcing our success to our collective ability for self-reflection, which is really slow and not a very good strategy, if you ask me. So that's why I really love agreement-based self-organization. I hope that has some resonance to what it is that you were asking, but I did want to share that. And I'm going to just throw in one little last slide that I do want to highlight around these different heartbeats, to call out that these different heartbeats serve 3 of the 4 different spaces, specifically, actually 4 in a way. But I do want to call this out, like these different spaces are on all the time, and then they really help to figure out where to solve something that is alive for you today. Right? I have attention around how I interact, or what you said. I've got some nervousness around my my ability to be able to show up. Hey, that's something that you experience personally. Maybe the organization can be there to support you to grow that, or maybe you just need some self-reflection, or maybe that is because there's some fear around the interaction patterns that show up. We need to improve and give some attention to the interpersonal space and figure out if we can find some norms and agreements on how we communicate so everybody can feel safe. Or maybe it's really work related, right? The organizational space, how to do work. Or maybe it's structural, and we need to change the way that the roles, the governance shows up, and make some changes to that. But if we don't make this explicit, and this happens a lot, everything gets muddled up, and everything becomes one massive discussion that you cannot untangle and you cannot move forward on. And all we end up doing is finding enough space to love each other enough not to all run away. Which is lovely and caring, but not very effective purpose manifestation. I just want to share that, and then I think honor our time boundary. I would I have a lot of energy in me. I notice I want to continue and see what's alive and support that, but I'm going to honor and close it off and leave it at this for this session. And know I'm available. I'm passionate about this work. I'd love to continue this discussion in whatever form or format. And any follow-ups are welcome, and reach out to me in Discord, and we'll pick it up. And with that, I'll hand it back to you, Dani.
Thank you so much, Joost. I'm also, every time you're coming and joining us in our circles or We just recently, for everyone else who doesn't know, we had a session with Joost in the movement building, and it's always so fruitful and amazing how much it contributes to our co-creation. So thank you so much for showing up here, Joost, and sharing your wisdom. And I definitely know that everyone who's here will probably ask for more. So I will try to set up a new session with you furthermore in the ongoing process. And let's see how we can do that, whether in the academy or as an add-on, we will see. And maybe just one or two more sentences towards you as the ambassadors in the academy right now, also on the journey to co-create more in Seeds. It's giving you an introduction also on how we already experiment with it and how we already endeavor to find a better way how to give everyone who's here the same equal voice and the same equal opportunity to co-create. And still, what we have the most difficulties with is saying no, finding our boundaries, and really adapting to a structure that is giving us the space to be productive and efficient and still lovingly and kind and joyful and everything. So it's an ongoing process for all of us. So it's not only for you, new and experimental, but it's for all of us who are involved. It's the same. So yeah, I'm totally grateful for having this opportunity to learn more and more every day. And when now we are creating these quests and roles for you, and you all find your places or your, definition how you want to play more around your ambassador role, you will definitely get in touch more with Joost, but also everything that Joost brings in. And yeah, if there's more feedback on this, I would be happy to receive it in the ambassador channel. And definitely in the academy process, we will have an evaluation forum also in the end where you can add more than to it. And yeah, that's all for me. I'm mindful of people's time because we said it's an hour. So I don't know, Joost, what you said something about you have another 50 minutes, but I don't know.
No, I've got time, but I just want to honor the time boundary. And,
so
and I think
maybe if there's just, because I don't want to be the last one to have spoken, if we have a time to do like a checkout round, everyone who still has time can say something as a checkout and either leave a comment or some joy or also feedback. That would be amazing from my point of view, if that's fine for you, Joost.
of course, you're now in control, so I'm sitting back and joining.
Okay, everyone. So let's do a checkout round then, and whatever you want to share, feel free to share. How about starting with Sven?
Oh man, I love this self-organization stuff so much. It's so stimulating to think about how we can create more equitable and productive groups where people can really step into their highest contribution and their highest potential. So that was a great call. I really love everything that Joost brings in all of the posts and discussions and calls that I've seen, and excited to continue to learn about this and how we can optimize it moving forward, because it also has the pain points that are involved, and contrasting it with hierarchy management. You can see like, okay, so hierarchy management actually has all of these benefits, but we've kind of done that. We've done the hierarchy management. It has all of these problems too, and so we're kind of pioneering this new territory of how do we effectively show up as sovereigns to co-create instead of to participate in a hierarchical structure that has dominated, I don't know, the past 5,000 years of human history on the planet. Anyways, Western human history or what have you. But really grateful for the call, really grateful for all that went into putting this together. And thank you, Joost, once again. Thank you, Danny. And I'll pass to Irina.
Thank you, Sven. I really appreciate the session. Thank you, Joost, for your presentation. I'm I've struggled a lot. It's 10 p.m. here, but I didn't want to give up to follow your presentation, and I'm sure that I want to kind of see the video again. I missed some of the points, and I feel this is super important, and I'm looking forward to some second session and some further discussion on the topics that you brought up today. Thank you, and I'm passing on to Martina.
Thank you, Irina. Thank you, Joost. I've learned so much. It feels like, oh gosh, because at the beginning of the meeting, I felt, okay, what is this about? And then like you brought up all these points and I felt like, yes, 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 exactly. And yeah, it resonates so much with me. And yeah, I'm so grateful. Thank you so, so much. And I pass it on to Stephen.
Thank you, Martina. Well, no, this was a wonderful addressing of the topic. I really enjoyed your point of view, and you clearly thought about it very, very deeply, Joost. I find some resonance with being in the Native American talking circles, where I learned a lot there because they have a form of self-organizing principles that I learned from, and then I see it now coming in into our Haifa. I love it. I also learned that when we're dealing with conflict, if you can get people out of the blame side of things and move them into intention, that almost all human beings come to a problem or an issue with good intentions. And if you can go to that point, you can mediate and resolve tremendous issues with relative ease rather than going to the blame game. Anyway, I totally enjoyed this, and I look forward to a one-on-one with you later. And let's see, Justin.
Yeah, it was very stimulating. I don't know. I feel good walking away. And I pulled a card. So I was just gonna read that little healing it has, but it says, we now release any unhealthy attachment to the structures, routines, and belief systems of others that are preventing us from accessing and honoring our inner sacred rhythms. May we be assisted through unconditional love to know the truth of our own timing. We love ourselves enough to give ourselves rest when needed, trust in our own timing, and not feel forced or rushed. We believe in ourselves enough to take healthy, inspired risks and actions when the timing feels right to us. We trust in our own inner rhythms. We are wise, they are wise and helpful. Through unconditional love, so be it. So this is it feels like that trusting ourselves or trusting myself is like the kind of challenge, but also the opportunity or the lesson that's learned, and kind of stepping into this like a new way of living and organizing and maybe purposing as well. I'll pass it to Victoria.
Thank you, Justin. Sorry, Joost, I had a meeting, so I had to miss a lot. So I suppose I am watching the recordings. It seems to be very interesting from all the feedback. So looking forward, and probably if I have questions, I will approach you or asking in the next round. But thanks for the opportunity, and would like to pass it to Christoph.
Okay, thank you, Joost, for this presentation. I would like to finish with the questions that you don't need to answer tonight. Do we need rules for IFA to give to new people so they can understand how this organization is working? And I pass it to Monique.
Thank you. So you don't know me yet, probably, and I think you all know each other, but I would like to become an ambassador, and I was very curious for this subject. I have quite some experience myself with self-organizing, working in a self-organizing way. And in the beginning, it was very hard for me and my colleagues. But we've really learned a lot, and it became really joyful. So yeah, it might be hard in the beginning, and it became joyful because we succeeded in dealing also with the interpersonal stuff. And that was actually, I think, the most important thing why it worked. So, and yeah, I liked what Stephen said. I think that's what we succeeded in, and yeah, so much safety that everyone could bring his true authentic self and everything was welcome. And yeah, bring all shadows to the light. And then, yeah, in the end, yeah, everyone can feel home also when at work. Yeah. So I would like to share more about our experiences with Joost. But yeah, that's it. Thank you. Thank you for the very clear story, Joost.
Andrea, you want to go?
Hey, yeah, thank you, Joost. It's totally one of my heartfelt topics, and I loved your presentation. And yeah, for me, self-organization is, I think it can be key or is key for to success economically, socially, environmentally, and has the potential to change our world for good. But I think it involves a process of unlearning a lot, because the predominant culture at the moment is, and the beliefs we have, I think we have to unlearn a lot, not only personally, but also how we interact with each other. And this is the key challenge, I think, that also within Seeds, where a lot of people are already familiar with concepts. And this is why I would disagree on the fact that personal development is made as a, it gives the freedom for personal development, but I think personally key to success is that people involve in that personal process also, because otherwise I think things get stuck, my personal opinion. But I'm looking forward to deepen this topic within our channels, and I hope we'll have the chance for another session. I don't know who else is.
Dimitri?
Fabi,
Yes.
did you go? Oh.
Sorry.
Thank you so much, Joost. It was like, I didn't know where I'm going to and what it's gonna be about, but how much resonating and how much relevance is there to even being an ambassador and creating, raising the movement. And after this, I left with 4 pages of notes, and I got more questions than answers. And I have this thirst for more information and more more context. And I'm wondering if there is any videos or resources where I can fill it up, so next time I can follow more, because I feel I was like losing some bits and pieces here and there. And I'm gonna definitely watch recordings. So I'm wondering if there's any resources that I can look up to.
So maybe
And
tomorrow
second question,
we have the global ambassador call tomorrow in the morning, Central Europe time, 9 o'clock. So that's something where you can come and then we share more and answer more of your questions. And also the new ambassador onboarding call is tomorrow. It's more in the afternoon. I don't really know whether 3 or 4 CET. And that's where we also introduce the academy process. So you can apply for the academy and become part of the next round. And there's a lot of stuff to dive into and learn.
Awesome.
And yeah, that's happening. Not tomorrow, sorry, on Thursday. It's all happening on Thursday.
Second question.
Yeah.
For me, tomorrow is Thursday.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Tomorrow is
I live in the next day, in the future.
Yeah.
So I have a calendar, Google Calendar of Ambassador, and I haven't noticed this call that I'm at now. It was in Discord. I got a link from Discord, and I can't see call for ambassador onboarding in the calendar, and I can't see you mentioned another call.
I'm going to
Thursday,
help you
something
out,
else.
Dimitri. I'm minding our time. Reach out
Yes.
to me on Discord personally, and I'm totally happy to help you out with all of your questions.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there's another calendar.
I will help you out. I can't answer this very quickly
Okay,
because
thank you so much.
I will help
Thank you
out
so much.
later. Sorry.
Thank you so much for the session, Joost. It was amazing.
Fabi, you're still missing, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, I also feel this is as an invitation for a learning process. And yeah, I always thought, because I've actually not really experienced, I think a lot of you come from a corporate background, and I have never really experienced this. And at the same time, I'm also very new to this, to the self-organization, and I feel super lucky to actually have such a nice coaching, right, for this, and to learn like that. And I feel a bit like Irina that I think I will have to go over the recording. It's been a really long day today, and but there a lot of what you said really hit home, and also clarified to me what's, or like kind of yeah, I could crystallize it, some feelings that I had joining now for in Seeds, and what's happening on Discord. And so yeah, I'm really looking forward to also getting more structure and to kind of learning more how we self-organize. So thank you very much, and looking forward to hear more.
I think everyone went right, if I have followed up correctly. So thank you so much again. I shared a lot, and I can just say I feel so much joy after every session, also in regards to the Ambassadors Academy. And I'm feeling a lot of joy, especially for all of you showing up to really want to engage more and co-create and know more and everything. So we hope that we can catch up with everything, but yeah, it's a total pleasure to play this whole game with you. Again, thank you so much for Joost. Last words for you, and then we can close up.
Yeah, this was a good exercise. I'm usually not very good at taking compliments, so I actively was sitting here receiving some of your lovely compliments. Thank you for that. And I really look forward to building more. Like it's one thing to hint at the opportunity. It's a whole different ball game to start to do this really hard work. So let's start to do this really hard work, and do that together, and create the container within which we can fail, have pain, and show pain, and blame each other to figure out what's underneath. What is the trigger, so that we can figure out the intent, like Stina so nicely said. Looking forward to that. See you guys soon.
Have a great day and night and everything. See you soon, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.